Hey, what up guys? Welcome back to another episode of Future Figuarts. We're breaking the double-digit mark with this being our 11th episode now. Now, choosing who to cover for this episode was a bit of a challenge as there's so many other characters I wanted to cover, but I'm gonna go with popular demand on this one. So last time we covered Raditz, whose origins are of course way back at the start of Dragon Ball Z, and this time we'll be covering a character we met much later in Super, but ironically has been around well before Raditz was even born. Today, we'll be talking about the legendary assassin of Universe 6 himself, Hit. Alright, so Hit. I think this is the first character we're covering in Future Figuarts format that already has a Dragon Star's counterpart. We're not counting Jiren and UI Goku yet as they weren't out at the time of those episodes. So I think it's only logical by starting off by taking a look at what we would keep and what we would Hakai from the Dragon Star's version of Hit. Now I wish I had him in hand for you guys, but I'm consulting Kenny Boy's Toys review on this one. So thanks Kenny Boy. If you haven't already, check out his channel, he's definitely got some cool content up there. So right off the bat, I'm gonna go ahead and say that the first thing to transfer over from Dragon Star's version of Hit to the Figuarts version is the color choices for the majority of his body and clothing, with the exceptions being the colors chosen for his head, arms, legs, ears, and hands. While the purple may be a bit darker on the torso, I think it looks dope, and if Tamashii decides not to shade anything on the body, a darker paint would hide this more than a lighter paint would. For the ears, I think they need to go with a white with a faint purple tone in it rather than just a solid white, as based on this shot here, that seems to be how they should look. For the arms and legs now, I feel they should go with a sort of slate blue instead of the blue used on the Dragon Stars model because anime accuracy, right? Lastly, for the hands and the rest of his head, this should be a light purple. I almost want to say lilac instead of the colors they use on the Dragon Stars figure. So another thing I like about the look of this Dragon Stars version is the sculpt work on the coat. I think the tread-like ridges look sick, and perhaps more importantly in terms of transfer, soft plastic for it like Android 18's skirt and not a hard shell casing like with Whis. If you use a hard shell plastic for Hit's coat, you're just dooming yourself from the get-go. As for anything else in terms of transferability from the Dragon Stars model to the Figuarts, I would say Articulation, but based on what I've seen, there is a bit of issues, particularly in the collar where the head joins with the body, so we'll leave Articulation out. In terms of proportions, they seem alright. From what I can see, the boots look a bit big and comical, but again, it's hard for me to really say without the figure in hand. For his actual scale now, Hit is taller than Goku, and based on the shot here, it looks to be like he's Piccolo's height. Speaking of this shot, was anyone else thrown off by how kinda pointless this filler was? Anyways, I guess you could say that's why it's filler. Now for faces, it's actually refreshing to talk about Hit over Jiren and Toppo for once, cause the man actually loosens up a bit and shows some more facial expressions. Now let's get down to the obvious ones and get them out of the way. This stern face should be his default face or head, no questions there. As for the rest of the faces now, I think we should take a look at some from his first fight with Goku. So the first one isn't a face I expect him to include, but I think it'd be pretty funny. It's from the instance in which Hit tried to fake powering up when he saw Goku screaming and increasing his power that way. Again, it's not too different from a regular screaming power-up face, but through the oversized mouth he's drawn with, it just adds a bit of comedy to a normally serious character. Okay, so the next face I could actually see Hit coming with is a glancing off to the side face. It seems to fit his character quite nicely, and while normally I don't really like to use up a slot for a face on this expression, I think it goes pretty well with Hit. So where are we at? 3 faces so far? Well, I have 2 more possibilities to throw at you. How about a teeth gritting face? This is actually a face we see from time to time throughout his fight with Goku and again with Jiren, and it's one of the few that add a little bit more character depth to his emotion. Now the last possibility I'd like to put forth is a sort of shocked face like we see again against Goku and Jiren. For me, I don't see this one as a necessity, but again, just add some more depth and of course options for his posability. So I just want to touch on the hands real quick here. Now aside from the usual fists, I feel martial arts hands are a must, as well as the flat variation of the Energy Blast hands, which could also be used as another type of martial arts hand to be posing on. I guess Energy Blast hands could be included as well, but I'd be okay if they weren't, as Hit isn't really known for using gigantic ki blasts of any sort compared to other characters. Instead, I'd much rather see a different type of hand, which I'll touch on in accessories. So starting out is something a little different. I'm not entirely sure how it'll work with the budgets for the figure, but I think a separate type of arms in which the hands are not even full hands, but partial hands sheathed in a soft purple plastic that you would rest against his coat would be sick. I mean, if the coat doesn't have pockets, this would be the next best way you could recreate this pose for him. Again, not saying it's realistic, but rather just putting the idea out there. Next up would be some sort of effect part for his time skip. Now this will be a little bit tricky. I could maybe see it being done using thinner, translucent lines in a lattice formation, kind of like a plastic honeycomb, broken glass sort of thing that you could pose in front of Hit. What would be even cooler is if some of the shards could be pivoted and adjusted, but again, this might be going too far for an effect part to be included with a relief. Now if they don't want to do it that way, they could include a smaller base part where Hit kind of turns the floor into a glass-like looking thing for his time skip. Aside from this, I don't really think there's much else to include with Hit that would be relevant to his character and still place him within a reasonable Figuarts budget for collect. So Hit, there's already that Dragon Stars version of him, and from what I hear, it's pretty good. I'm not exactly sure when Tamashii will reveal Hit, but I know they will sooner or later, as I'm sure he'll be a big hit with the fans. So if and when he comes out, are you going to pick him up? How much would you pay for a Hit Figuarts figure? And lastly, how would you pose him? Now just one more thing before we end off here, I'm thinking about scrapping the whole pairing idea for future Figuarts just because it'll allow me a little bit more flexibility in terms of discussing a better variety of characters and eliminating predictability with the episodes. Are you guys okay with that? Let me know in the comments below, and you know what I always say, may the best of your todays be the worst of your tomorrows. Peace.